the president and runs the university, Dr. Juan Necochea.
Buenos días a todos y a todas. Es un placer estar aquí hoy. It's a true pleasure to see so many people attend this event. This is the National Hispanic University. Dr. Lopez had to be out today at a different event. He asked me to welcome all of you to the National Hispanic University. What I love about today is the energy, a tremendous amount of energy, a very creative energy. So what I see is hope. And, you know, whenever I talk about women and the role of women, I think about my mother because I'm here because of her. You know, so my mother, who passed away about 20 years ago, is my past, right? You here today are my present. Think about it. The role women are playing currently in this society in particular. And then around you, you see the future. My students from LCPA are here. My students from the university are here. And so there's a lot of hope in the air, which makes me a very happy person. And all of you are making tremendous contributions, have made them in the past, are making them now, and I'm very hopeful for the future, mainly because women are playing more and more a very important social, political, economic role, and that gives me joy because I'm convinced that if women run the world, it will be much better. But I only have a minute and a half, so I'm done. So I want to talk briefly about Tony Fuentes, who's going to say a few words to you. Tony Fuentes, look at his smile. Tony, principal of the Latino College Press.
Welcome, everyone. Bienvenidos. I'd like to introduce a teacher who is one of, I think, one of our greatest teachers here on our campus.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Telma Muni, and I teach Latin American history, AP Spanish, and I do other things at the college. And I was also part of the committee for today, so welcome.
I'd also like to have ladies turn around and see some of our future leaders of San Jose, our students, our graduating seniors. Wade, here's an opportunity for you today to honor the past, your present, and your future. Our students here at LCPA, our ladies that are graduating, are about to finish. They have less than 30 days for them to complete and graduate high school. Many of our, 100% of our students have applied and have been accepted to a 4-year university. That includes our ladies here. Miss Mooney has, and she has given me one of these envelopes in which the ladies have their graduation cap and gown. We have, for example, Carolina Gonzalez, who will be a doctor here in this community. We have Talia Zapata, a professional lawyer. In the future, we'll also have Ivan Castro, teaching for NHU History and Art. And finally, another example, Beatriz Ayala, who will be doing immigration law. She will be an attorney for us.
Thank you, Mr. Fuentes. And remember, if you know any kids who are going to high school or need high school that will really support them, we have a high school here on this campus. Just make sure to talk to Mr. Fuentes and get information about the Latino College Prep Academy. At this time, I'm going to introduce Dr. Consuelo Rodriguez, who's going to tell you a little bit about Olga Loya. And at this time, any seat that is empty is yours. Please take a seat. Please take a seat.
Hola, Consuelo Rodriguez, and I'm here to introduce Olga Loya. Olga Loya is an internationally known. She's also an author. She's also a performance artist. She's also an educator, K-12. She's a mother, a grandmother, and she's a wonderful friend. Olga has performed Juana Briones since 1997. Today, she will perform this. She will perform it in a Chickasaw, abbreviated Chickasaw format. And an abbreviated format consists of 3 segments. The first one is that she will come out and she will be dressed and attired of Juana Briones. Okay? And she will be performing Juana Briones in the first person. Secondly, there'll be a period when you can ask her questions. And the questions will cover the period between 1803, 1802, and 1889. So your questions have to be directed to Juana Briones. After that segment, the third segment, Olga will take questions as Olga. She will step out of character from Juana Briones back into herself. And at that point, she will have questions that she will entertain from the audience. We just ask that you please respect the performer and speak and pay attention. And we really, really are so lucky to have Juana Briones with us this morning. Thank you.
Uy, qué ruido. Bienvenidos. Let me try that again. Bienvenidos. Bienvenidos. Something needs to be done. My name is Juana Briones y Tapia de Juana de la Trinidad Briones y Tapia de Miranda. I look back on my life with great pride because I was a landowner. And when the United States tried to take the land away from me, I fought them. I got the separation from my husband who beat me. And because I got a separation, I supported my 8 children by being a ranchera, a dairy farmer, a vegetable gardener, and a seamstress. I was also a curandera, a healer, and a partera. I am still that. And now I'd like to tell you a little bit about my life. I was born in 1802 in Villa de Branciforte, which was later to be called Santa Cruz. My papa's name was Marcos Briones, and he came from San Luis Potosí, Mexico. And my mama, her name was Maria Isadora Tapia, and she came from Culiacan, Sinaloa, and she came on the De Anza expedition, 1776. Yes, we lived there until I was 10, and then, que Dios la bendiga, my mama se murió. But before she died, she showed me how to sew with beautiful small stitches. And she showed me the power of the hierbas, the herbs. And then we moved to Poland Springs, which was close to Yerba Buena Presidio. And Yerba Buena was later to be called San Francisco. I lived there with my brothers and sisters, and I'm not going to tell you all about all my brothers and sisters, or we'd be here all day. But I will tell you about a few. There was Gregorio. He was in the militario, and when he retired, he got a land grant called Bolinas. And my brother, Felipe, he was in the militario. Well, truth to tell you, all my brothers were in the militario. And when he retired, he got a land grant Pinol. There was my sister, Epixicia. She was close to age to me, and we were always together. We were godparents to each of his children many times over. And there was my sister, Maria de Guadalupe. She married Candelario Miramontes, and Miramontes owned all of Half Moon Bay. She married well. And there was my sister Luz. She married, and her husband died after 2 years, so she always lived with one of us. We lived far away from everything. There were the people in the Presidio, the familias, and then there was the Misión, the mission. There was the iglesia and the workspaces, and then all around the house were casitas where the militario lived. And the militario was there to protect the iglesias and to bring back the Indians when they ran away. When the Indians would come to visit, if they said they wanted to be Católicos, they were not allowed to leave. And even though the priests taught them many things, how to be carpenters, and how to be shipwrights, and how to be blacksmiths, and how to weave, and how to sew, and how to make candles, and how to make wine, and how to raise cattle, and how to raise sheep, all of those things. In fact, the rancho was like a little pueblo. But you know, the Indians, they missed their land. They missed their way of life. And because there were not very many people, when somebody came to visit, there was a fiesta. The men, they would be out competing with the razos, the riatas. They could go for a long distance with them. And horsemanship, they were very good with horses. And sometimes there would be bullfights and they would bet. And we women, we would be in the cocina cooking making carnitas, meat with chili, and frijoles, and arroz, and tortillas, and pasteles, and huckleberry, and blackberry, and blueberry. And then in the afternoon, we would eat. And then we would eat. And then we would eat. And then in the evenings, we would get dressed for the fiesta, the baile. The men wore leather pants or velvet pants and vests with shirts beautifully embroidered by we women. And we wore beautiful full skirts and shawls like this and lace and our hair pushed up or pulled up with beautiful combs. And then there would be música, guitars and violins and dancing all night long, sometimes for days. And many an idea for a wedding happened at one of those dances. We were all related to each other in one way or another, either by familia, family, matrimonio, marriage, or compadre and comadre. If you had a child and another person baptized a child, it was your comadre and compadre. And since we had many children, we had lots of comadres and comadres. If somebody wanted to get married, they had to get permission of the papa. And if he said no many times, they did not get married. And sometimes when people were courting, they were not allowed to talk to each other. But ooh, the eyes can say so much. In 1820, I married my husband, Apolinario Miranda. He was in the militario. We lived in Poland Springs with my sister Guadalupe and her husband Candelario and Luz and my papa. Now they say that Poland Springs has great powers of fertility. Well, it must be true. I had 11 children, 4 of whom died. Sí, terrible. And my sister Guadalupe, she had 20 children. We had many children because we needed to populate the land, because we needed help in the ranchos, and because we were Católicos. In time, my husband, Apolinario, got a land grant, el Ojo de Agua de Figueroa. And so we built a house and a corral and we moved there. And it was there that I began to help the marineros, the sailors. The sailors would come, I don't know what this noise is here. Let me see if I can fix it there. The sailors would come to get on ships, and then they would be stuck. They could not get off. The capitanes would not let them get off the ships. But then when they found out I was a curandera, they would come to me, I would heal them, I'd put them up in my loft until they were better, and then I would send them to my brother in Pinol. Most of the time they came one at a time, but one time I had 4 young men. Charles Brown, he was from the east. Elijah, ay, qué rigoso. Elijah, who was from an Indio from Connecticut. And Gregorio Escalante, who was from the Philippines, and Brian, who was from Philadelphia. I got an opportunity to meet many, many people. Now Elijah, he was a good cook, but he wasn't very smart. One day he was out cutting wood on a branch, and he was cutting, except he was sitting on the outside of the saw. Oh, I can see you know what happened. When he cut the branch through, he fell. He broke his arm, and I had to make him a comfy poultice to make him better. I did not get to stay at El Ojo de Agua de Figueroa for very long because my husband retired, and when he retired, he began to drink, and when he began to drink, he beat me. He beat me, and he was terrible. He said terrible things to me. And so I got my own land grant. Yegua buena. And I was glad to be there with my children and my animales and my servants, the Indians. Many times, the Indians came to live in the ranchos because they really didn't know where else to go because they had been in the misiones. The Indians were the backbone of the ranchos. And I was glad to be a California woman because California women could keep their land and their inheritances. Not like the Americanos who had to give everything back to the men. I was very happy to be there. And to be there and working. I worked as a ranchera. I raised cattle and sold hide and tallow and traded it. I was a dairy farmer. I had cows and I sold milk. And there was one man who came every day, Señor Tomés. And one day he came with a friend. And he said, I'd like some milk, please. And so I told my son, Jose, go get the cow. And he brought the cow. And the cow were wild. So he had to tie the cow to the tree. And then I fed it to milk. But she was dead because she wouldn't give any milk. But I know what to do. I got a cap and I put the cap under the milk, under the cow, and she started to suckle. Well, that cow could not resist. And then I pulled that cap away. And I milked the cow, and then his friend said, I would like some milk too. I said, Jose, go bring a container. And he came up with a container, and they started to laugh. They laughed so hard that Mr. Tomesa's friend fell off the fence. And then he said, could you get another container, please? Later I found out that they thought that the container was a chamber pot. I would never have done a thing like that. And when they came to buy milk, I sold them vegetables and fruit. And also, remember I told you that my mama showed me how to sew with beautiful small stitches? Well, people liked the way that I sewed, and they would hire me to make clothes for them and to mend clothes. And I also was a curandera. People would come to me and they say, ay, tengo un dolor de cabeza, my head hurts. And I would give them manzanilla, chamomile, té de manzanilla. Other days they would come and they say, ay, esta cosa. ¿Por qué está haciendo, why is it making so much noise? Where was I? Huh? Oh, sí. They would come and they say, ay, tengo un dolor de estómago. And so I would give them hierba when I'd fallen and hurt themselves, and I would give them poultices of consuela, full of comfrey, to put on their arms or their legs, wherever they hurt themselves. And you know those blackberry pies that were so good? The blackberry leaves are very good for fever and for cough, so I would make them tea. And I always had romero, rosemary, because rosemary is good for bad breath, and some people really needed it. And I always carried little muñequitas, little dolls for the children, so they make it be that. I used to have a little boy too, but I lost him, but a little girl and a little crocheted. When they were scared, I would give them this to make them feel better. And many times, when ships came into port, they would come to me, and I would make them some hierba buena tea. And we would drink tea and talk about where they had come from and where we were going. And I tell them as best I could about hierba buena. You know, I never learned how to read or write, but I did learn how to pick people to read or write for me. In 1844, who were trustworthy, that's the important part. In 1844, I bought a piece of land south of Hierba Buena, 4,438 acres for $300. And at that same time, I went to a friend to write a letter to Bishop Diego in Santa Barbara, because my husband Apolinario had been worse and worse every year. I asked, please, I would like a separation. My husband drinks, and when he drinks, he beats me. And he brings strange people into the home. Please. And he doesn't even support us. I want a separation. And the bishop, he sent a letter to the alcalde, the mayor, asking him to protect me from Apolinario. From 1840 to 1846, I reported him 12 times to the court. In fact, in 1845, he spent a year in jail because he was so horrible. Finally, in 1847, I was able to get everything together, and we moved to my new place, Rancho Purísima de la Concepción. And in 1847, que Dios lo bendiga, my husband died, Apolinario. We moved just in time. In 1848, the United States took the land away from Mexico, as Mexico had taken away from Spain. And in 1848, the Land Claim Act, people came and said that we all had to show our deeds. And many people had deeds, but the deeds were not good. The trees had been knocked down, or the rivers diverted. And then in 1849, well, you know what happened then, the gold rush. Ooh, the people came rushing. They wanted food, they wanted tools, they wanted clothes, they wanted hide and tallow. So we would get carreteras filled with hide and tallow, and we would go to San Francisco and we would trade, and the ships would come in and we would trade and buy things. It was a wonderful time. It was a wonderful time. Trading and shaping and going every which way. It was a time for for us to spend time together. And then the Land Claim Act said that since Apolinaro was dead, that we were not using the land. That was a family joke because Apolinaro had never been interested in ranching. It was me that had been interested, and I thought, I'm not going to let him take my land away from me. So I got a very, very good lawyer. And we went from 1852 to 1864 in the fights. In fact, in 1854, Charles Brown, who I had helped before as a sailor, he came and he testified that I indeed was using the land. In fact, in 1864, the Supreme Court said the land was mine. It is 1868, and I don't go to San Francisco very much anymore, but I do travel to San Jose. In fact, I got 3 rooms in San Jose in the Peña house to give me time to rest, to Jafun Bay, and I always take my bags, this bag, and I have another bag that I take when I'm working as a partera to give birth, and the children are absolutely convinced that when I take that bag that I have a baby in it. Because when I get there, there's no baby, and when I leave, there's a baby. I never let them look in the bag. There have been many, many changes in my life. There's been the change of power from Spain to Mexico to the United States. There's been the misiones that were very powerful and then secularized and gave all the land away. There was a gold rush that changed everything, the way people treated each other and the way they treated the land. There was a Foreign Miner Act that said that nobody but Americanos could mine. I said to my sons, don't go out there, it's peligroso. Let them do all the work and you sell them the food. There was a Land Act that took so much land away from so many people. And there was the Iron Horse. The Iron Horse that had changed how people traveled and how they took things from one place to another. But one thing has never changed. Mi familia. We still come together. We have wonderful fiestas. Sometimes for 2 or 3 days. Guadalupe comes with her family from Hapu Bay, and I don't know why, every single one of them is musical. They bring all their instruments, and then my brother Felipe, he died, but his wife Manuela and all her children come, and everybody comes from every side, and we have these wonderful fiestas. And sometimes the children will come up to me and they say, Abuelita, grandmother, tia, auntie, how is it that you have done all these things? And I look at them and I laugh and I say, Dios me llamó. God called me to be a curandera, a healer, and if I could be a curandera, I could do anything. Ah, yes, I have had a very, very good life. Gracias a Dios. And now if you would like to ask me some questions, I would be more than happy to answer. How did I adapt to language change? Well, you know, I lived in San Francisco, so I had a lot of people coming in and out of my house all the time. And somehow I seemed to be able to speak and understand the language. I didn't speak it well, but I spoke it well enough to be able to understand it and to speak back with you people, and it helped me a great deal. And yes? I was born in 1802, March 12th, 1802. Yes? Adapting, because it was something that I really knew to do. I was interested in. I was always interested in having contracts very clear. If I did something with somebody, I made sure that everything was in place. And like some of my brothers were not as interested in it as I was, and my husband was definitely not interested in business, but I was. And so, for me, it was more of just keeping track and paying attention, one thing after another, and so I was able to do it. Ah, see, that's a good question. You see, I I was a curandera from everywhere. So I had a different relationship with many people. So it was easier for me to do things like this. And because I knew that I could do it, I did do it. But it's a good question, because how did I do that in that time? I did it because the most important thing, I was a curandera, and because I understood business, and because people didn't question me. And so that's a very good question, because it's a different time. But you know, people who are curanderas many times feel that they have special rights. I know I did. Anybody else? Yes? My children are all alive. Oh, I had 3 who died in 1828. I don't even like to say their names. One was 1, 3, and 5 of smallpox. And then the next year, another one died. And that was a horrible year. Could you imagine losing 3 children in 1 year? Many, many, many lágrimas, tears. And the rest of them are still here. Many of them work on the land and have their own ranchos. Manuela lives with me. Presentación lives with her husband in San Francisco. She married a man named Ridley. And my sons, Jose Anecito and Jose Julian, live with me. I had 3 that live with me, and the other ones have gone and doing ranching. We do ranching. Yes?
What did you like to cook? And if you did, what did you like to make?
I like to cook. I like to make carnitas. And frijoles and arroz. And I like to make pasteles. Different kinds of pies. Yes?
Didn't your children have involved in the Sonata?
My children? Manuela seemed to have a little bit of it. Yeah. My familia, Guadalupe, did have a little bit of it too. I was the one that seemed to have the most. That seemed to be, I had another sister, Agreda, who had it too. But I seemed to be the most that had it. How much time do I have? Huh? I have 5 and 5. Okay. Yes?
One last question.
Oh no. I don't know about the school. No, I don't know about the school. There's no school there. It's just land.
Do you know of any other women that were living during the same time that were interested in some of the things you were interested in, that had the kind of power?
My sister-in-law, when Felipe died, she went to get the land and she got it. So she owned the land. So there were women who owned the land. Not that many who got it first. Many of them got it after their husbands had died. But some who did. Yes. Yes. Anybody else have any other questions? Yes?
You said that the church allowed you a separation from your husband. Was that very common?
That if people, the business people, society saw me connected to my husband, who was very, very cruel, I did not want to be connected. They would not look at me in the same way. And that separation really helped me a great deal in being acknowledged as a businesswoman. But also really helped me, myself and my family, to not have to deal with him.
It wasn't very common though. How are you able to separate? Why did the church allow that?
This is very difficult to talk about. My husband was accused of incest of my older daughter, Presentación. People can drink, people can beat, but that's not allowed. And then he went over the line. And that's why I was able to get that separation. I think if he'd just been beating me and speaking terribly to me, I mean, that happens a lot. That happens a lot.
Being in Trinidad, we had many followers. We had a lot of respect for the community. But do you ever have any enemies? But the jealousies of your popularity?
Not that I know of. Thank God. Gracias a Dios. And now I'd like to have Olga come and talk to you a little bit, just a tiny little bit. Briones could have lived in this time and this age for who she was. And she was a very interesting person to work with because she did not read or write. But because she was so interesting, a lot of people wrote about her. So I was able to find a lot of information about her on a roundabout way of other people, and also working on finding out how she lived during that ranch period and the gold rush period, and it was a very bad period in the 1860s when a lot of rancheros lost a lot of their land and their crops, and there was a lot of things. There was a flood, there was a drought. It was a terrible time. But she's been a very interesting character for me because she is so vital and strong, and I think she's a person that story needs to be told, and I'm really glad that Jeanne did the book, that you'll get to hear from her in a little bit because she's got more information there. Anybody else have questions? Yes? There's Jeanne just found an image not too long ago that's in the book. It was found in, where was it? Point Reyes National. And before we had no real image. She looks tough. No. She wasn't tiny and she looks tough. Cool. Yes? Well, it's kind of interesting because she had an abusive husband, and my grandmother left Mexico with 4 kids because of abusive husband. So when I started to work on her and I realized this, I felt like my grandmother and Juana were up there going, "You go, girl, you go." Yes?
Any descendants living in this area?
Not much. No.
There are, but I didn't think of all.
I met some here and there, cousins here, and I was at Santa Cruz Library doing some research on Juana, and this woman pulled me back and said, "Hey, you know, I'm the cousin of the cousin of the cousin of one of her brothers, Antonio, who was known to be a smuggler." Any other questions? I was interested in doing a Chautauqua on a woman. Well, actually, a friend of mine was doing a Chautauqua, and she said, "Would you ever be interested in doing a Chautauqua on a woman in San Francisco?" And I said, "Well, yeah," but then I kept going. I was working a lot up and down the state, and I go to all the California rooms, and they were not really very interesting women. And then a friend of mine called me and said, "You know what, there's a show at Presidio on this woman named Juana Briones. Maybe you should go check it out." And so I did. And man, this was 3 panels, and I fell in love with her. So I came home, I said, "I'm going to do her." And then I got a call about 3 days later from the California Humanities Council. A friend of mine was working there, and she said, "Hey, Olga, your name keeps coming up." I said, "Oh yeah, why?" She said, "Well, we're going to be doing all these Chautauquas, and we're wondering if you'd be interested in doing Juana Briones." So I felt like I was called, really called to do Juana, and that's how she came to me and I came to her. So I want to thank you all for being such a great audience.